Audit webinar. This is in association with IFS Tamilnadu, Karnataka, Kerala, and with the Vidharbha chapter. I welcome you all to this webinar. To start off this program, I would like to invite Priya Kannan ma'am to give us the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwin. It is my pleasure to be part of this program as the convener of the SIG audit group of KPI and audits for IFS. I thank the mentor for this SIG, Dr. Gopinath sir, to be here and always happy to guide us on what next academic program to do. And I would like to thank all the speakers who have accepted to give the talk today, Dr. Manish Pankar sir and Dr. Sujata Ramakrishnan for their willingness to share the knowledge today. And I would like to invite all the chapter secretaries who have accepted to be part of this collaboration today to conduct this webinar. And all the participants, I welcome you all for this very important one, because as we know that audit and we have lots of data, and it would be great to assimilate our data to see how we can take it forward. And this is probably the best of the speakers we have today, who are going to talk with their varied and vast knowledge and experience on managing so many centers at the same time. So I would like to welcome all the participants for this very interesting topic and very interesting webinar for the day. And welcome Dr. Ashwin as well. He's executive committee member in IFS Tamilnadu. He's graciously accepted to conduct this program. Thank you so much. And I thank again all the welcome and thank all the secretaries, Dr. Ajanta Bhupati, Dr. Raju Nair, Dr. Mangala Devi, and Dr. Bindu Chimote for being part of this group, for this part of this webinar. Thank you and welcome you all once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
One second. Just going ahead with the presentation. It gives me great privilege to invite our knowledgeable expert today. We have Dr. P.M. Gopinath today, who is the Director of Reproductive Medicine of Kaveri Group of Hospitals. He is the past president of the Indian Fertility Preservation Society of India, a member of the International Fertility Preservation Society, founder president of SAUCI, the founder secretary of IFS Tamilnadu. I'm sorry. He is also a member of ESHRE, ASRM, IAG, ISAR, and the ASRM board certified andrologist as well. His major achievements are FMMC, FICS, FICOG, and MBA. He's got specialty training in fertility preservation, Israel. He's the past president of OXI. He's the organizing secretary of, he was the organizing secretary of AICOG 2015 Chennai. Leading lights in ART 2018 in IFS Cochin, Icon of the Year in South India 2019, and AIM Globe Award winner for Dynamic OG in Chennai 2022. He's also a TOI awardee for excellence on OG in 2023, Fertility Champion of the Year in the 4th edition of ETH Health World, and he's also a National Fertility Awards winner in March 2024. I welcome you, sir, to this event.
Thank you.
Sir, I think it suffices to say that you've been a teacher for all of us around, sir, and it's with your guidance that we've always carried the torch of IFS Tamil Nadu, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as we move on to the first session, it's on reducing cycle cancellations during ART audits. We have our expert and speaker, Dr. Manish Pankar. And I would like to invite the chairpersons for the session, Dr. Ajanta Bhupati and Dr. Raju Nair. Dr. Ajanta Bhupati has got 15 years experience in reproductive medicine. She's currently with Nova IVF Fertility, Anna Nagar, Chennai, and Tiruvallur. She's trained in reproductive medicine in the UK and was associated with London Women's Clinic UK. Her areas of interest are in male infertility, recurrent IVF failure, and enabling women with poor ovarian reserve to conceive using her own eggs as far as possible. She's the current treasurer of IFS Tamilnadu Chapter 24-26, recipient of the IFS Achievers Award 25, and the secretary of IFS Tamilnadu Chapter from 26 to 28. And she's also a member of ESHRE, BFS, IFS, ISAR, and OXI. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashwin.
And our next chairperson is Dr. Raju Nair. Sir, I'm sorry I couldn't receive your CV, so I picked it up from your own website online. Dr. Raju Nair, MBBS from Government Medical Kottayam 94-99, MSOG from AFMC Pune in 2004, and Reproductive Medicine Fellowship from CMC Vellore 2027. His special interests are in fertility-assisted reproduction, and he's carved a niche for himself in the field of reproductive medicine. And he's earned a fellowship in reproductive at CMC Vellore, and he's among the first few Indians to receive the subspecialty training in reproductive medicine, making him a real pioneer in Kerala. I welcome you, sir. I also kindly request Ajanta Bhuvati ma'am to introduce Dr. Manish Bankar, who is our first speaker.
It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Bankar sir, one of the pioneers in reproductive medicine in India. Sir is a director, Bankar IVF Women's Hospital. He is a chief clinical mentor for Indira IVF. He's a past president of ISAR 2012-2014. Sir is regional representative for International Committee for Monitoring ART. He is a deputy editor for Journal of Human Reproduction Science, member board of directors Poseidon Group and Pacific Rim Society of Reproductive Medicine. He's a founder board member Aspire. Today, sir is going to share his expertise on reducing cycle cancellations through clinical audit in IVF cycles, helping us to highlighting the importance of identifying the preventable causes of cycle cancellations and how to optimize the clinical outcomes and enhance IVF success rates. Looking forward to your talk, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Priya, and the entire team at the IFS SIG for inviting me to share my views on the role of audit in reducing cycle cancellations. Very truly said that whatever gets measured gets managed. So unless you are doing regular audits and you're measuring a particular parameter, you would never go how things are. And unless you know how things are, you will never be able to identify a problem and improve on this. So this is the fundamental principle behind which all audits are based. So medical audit is essentially a planned program which objectively monitors and evaluates clinical performance of all the practitioners and the various treatments that are being offered in that particular clinic, hospital, or a group. So this will identify opportunities for improvement, and because of the various aspects of audit, it will provide a mechanism. There's some background noise. It will provide a mechanism. Is the problem with my or are you finding problem with the audio? Sorry.
Are you logged in on two devices?
I think it's the other.
I think somebody's logged in on two devices.
I think if you can mute everyone else, we will.
Sujata, do you want to mute yourself?
Yeah, this is fine. Okay. So it then identifies opportunities for improvement, and it will also give us a mechanism as to how do we put these opportunities or the various methodologies in place and then monitor and ensure that this changes are sustained over a period of time. So such medical audits effectively serve three purposes. It will plan the future course of action based on what are the baseline findings of your audit. Many a times it is regulatory in nature because it is mandatory, and this should typically involve the entire staff of the clinic and not only the medical personnel. And in the end, this will assess the effectiveness of efficiency of the healthcare program or the service that your clinic is being offering. So it does serve multiple purposes. How do we go about doing an audit? So the first stage is you start preparing for the audit, and for that you need to select the criteria which you want to audit. I'll come to this as to how do you go about this. After you have selected the various criteria, you then start measuring performances for those criteria. And based on the findings of your observations, you start suggesting or planning for improvements, and then you keep on sustaining these improvements. Once this is done, you again go back to the top and you keep on repeating this. So it is a kind of a continuous improvement program. You monitor, you find a problem, you improve, you again go back, you find something else, and you improve further. So you continuously keep on improving through the process of audit. So over the next 15-20 minutes, I'll take you through how do you perform this audit. And many people call it a control because they don't like the word or they don't like audits and they link it to a control, but it is not control. So why is this problem? Because the issues are from a person who is subjected to the audit or a SOP is seen as a control. This, they think, clashes directly with the clinician's freedom because all of us clinicians feel and think that we know things better, and why do we need someone else to tell us, or why do we need an SOP to control us? We have our own clinician's freedom. And the biggest variable that we will always give as an excuse is the patient profile, that no matter what SOP you have, it does not cater to every patient profile, and my patients are unique. So the SOPs really don't matter. It is my clinician's decision that is more important than this. But it is not so because SOPs are essentially based on science. They are not derived out of thin air. It is all based on science. It is all based on evidence. It has also economics involved in it because whether you like it or not, we need to have economic considerations when you are running, whether it's your own clinic, whether it's a group or a chain or whatever it is, economics are important. And sometimes audit do help us in improving the economic health of the organization as well. And it is also a question of logistics because when you're running a large number of clinics, and if every clinic does things differently, logistics becomes a nightmare. So there are various issues which are essentially covered when you talk about audit, and it's not only simply monitoring a person's performance. So this thing which is indirectly called management control, it is actually a technique of leadership which begins with establishing the objectives of various departments of the company. At every level, we would identify and define objectives. We then align the operations to the company's strategy. You quantify these objectives. It cannot be vague, I want to be the best in the world. It cannot be. It's too vague to monitor. So you need to quantify what your objectives are. You can have an objective of I'll achieve a pregnancy rate of 60%, but you cannot have an objective of I'll have the highest pregnancy rate. You then periodically control and evaluate the achievements of all these quantifiable objectives that you have defined. And then you make your decisions, you make adjustments, you make changes based on what you find. So management control uses these indicators and objectives to look after the fulfillment of the strategy of the overall company. So the first step when you start looking at forming audit controls or SOPs or whatever it is, you need to have a vision. What are you aiming to achieve? And this could be that we will be the point of reference in quality in healthcare. This is just one of the objectives. You could then have a strategic objective coming to something which I will talk in this talk is we want to have a decrease in the cycle cancellation rate. So we are now defining or looking at strategies or SOPs to meet this objective, that is decreased cycle cancellation. And for this, you then have to define separate functional goals. So I will assess patient profile reserves, whether every patient's ovarian reserve profiles have been adequately assessed or not. Secondly, whether each patient has then been given an optimal stimulation based on the assessed profile. And thirdly, whether the response has been adequately monitored. So once you define what you want is your objective, you then have 2, 3, 4 functional goals which will help you in achieving this particular objective. And then you monitor the performance, which is the percentage cycles cancelled versus whatever benchmark that you have chosen. And if you are not achieving or reaching this benchmark, you know there is a problem. So this is something which you should put into place if you are looking at improving your overall performance. So this begins with formulating what are called key performance indicators. And how do you go about this? First, it should be linked to your objective. So if you are looking at formulating KPIs to reduce cancellation rates, you cannot have revenues earned in that month as a KPI for that particular indicator. So the indicator that you want to monitor has to be linked to the particular objective. You should then have an individual who is define the individual who is controlling this. So if it is cycle cancellation, it is the clinician. Is he capable of doing this? Yes. And most importantly, is the individual ready to accept it? Because unless the end user accepts it, no matter what KPIs you put into place, they will not serve a purpose. And for that, it should be simple, it should be reliable, it should be integrated to various other functions of the company. And most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, it should be quantifiable. We should be able to, you cannot say someone you did not do as good as I thought. No, you were supposed to have a cancellation rate of X%, but you are 1% below it, or you are 1% above it. So it has to be something quantifiable. It will always begin with education, and you should stress on having training programs for all the doctors, because unless the doctors are educated, they will not be able to fulfill the criteria. So everything begins with selection of the right person and education. And you can have any education program, but it has to be a regular education program. During this educational programs and discussions, you can have all the democracy that you want. You may want the cancellation rate to be X%. Someone else says it is Y. The third person says it should be Z. You can discuss and debate endlessly, but at the end of the day, you should arrive at a conclusion. And once that conclusion is arrived, then there is little freedom to deviate from it. So have democracy while you are arriving at decisions, but once a decision is reached, then there is no more freedom to anyone. Once your KPIs are defined, you then start writing what is called a standard operating procedure, which is a written document for that particular activity. So it will describe all the technical and administrative elements for that particular activity that you are going to monitor. So this SOP will communicate who will perform a particular task, what is required to perform the task, where will the task take place, when will the task take place, and how will the perform execute the task. So everything, who, what, where, when, and how, all the 5 things have to be specifically defined. The SOPs could be in various aspects. You could have clinical, embryology, operations. You could have any number of SOPs for your procedures. So once the SOPs are performed, then you start monitoring the various KPIs. And let me take you through what this KPIs will tell you. So it will give you a snapshot of the performance of various individuals. It will set goals and expectations, etc., etc. But I'll give you a very concrete example. Let's say if the clinician thinks that the pregnancy rates have fallen in recent times, the first thing, unfortunately, is we blame the laboratory. Now, the lab may be one of the reasons, but it could be because of various external factors as well. So how do you find this? And it is only your KPI data which will tell you where the problem is. Because if you then start monitoring all the various indicators, let us assume for a moment that you find that the number of eggs retrieved per pickup has fallen from 10 to 6, then that could be one of the reasons for a fall in the pregnancy and not the lab. If your cancellation rates have gone up, maybe that could be one of the reasons for the fall in in your pregnancy rate per patient rather than the lab. So if you monitor the KPI data, it will give you an idea as to where you should go about it. And ideal, this should be given prospectively to everyone so that there is no pointing of fingers, because once the data is transparent, every clinician himself would be able to monitor as to what is happening in the clinic. Now let us see the relevance of the KPI in the sense you might also have to modify KPIs. I'll give you another example. Let's say you want to monitor or establish a KPI for oocytes per collection. Then you should have a reference subgroup, and it should not be across all the boards. Because let's say one doctor is treating 80% of her patients which are below the age of 35 and only 20% older. But another consultant has 60% patients above the age of 35. The number of oocytes per collection for that doctor is going to be low. So you need to identify a group which is constant. So if you're measuring oocytes per collection, take the good prognosis patient below 35 and then you compare the different clinicians. And secondly, it should be something which is constant ideally, but it could also be transient. So let us say if you have if you think that we have started a new stimulation regimen, you're starting a new protocol, and you find that it is causing more abnormal oocytes. So then you should start defining a new KPI for the transient period, which looks at number of oocytes with a degenerative center or an immature oocyte to ICSI for that particular protocol, because your overall KPI will not be able to tell you this. So any change, and you want to see whether that change is working well or not, you have a transient KPI looking at only that change. Once the program that change gets integrated into your overall program, then the results are the same, then you remove that particular transient KPI. So depending on what you are doing, what you want to do, you design KPIs. The step then you need to do is, when you want to define the KPI, is to formulate what is called a benchmark. How will you decide what is the ideal cancellation rate? It cannot be plucked out of thin air. So you need to do what is called a benchmarking. So benchmark is something which is ideal or which is minimal. This could be based on internal benchmarks or external benchmarks. So external benchmarks are defined by the industry. I will take you through some of them. Or internal benchmarks are your own benchmarks. Let us again assume that you are monitoring cancellation rate and there is an international or an external benchmark which tells that the cancellation rate should be below 5%. But internally, you have a clinic which treats 70% of the patients above the age of 40 years. You will never be able to achieve this external benchmark. So for you use the external as a reference, but you look at your internal data over the last 3, 6 months, 1 year, and see how that compares with the external benchmarks based on the patient profile that you are treating. And you then define a benchmark which is based on both this. Otherwise, blindly picking up an external benchmark will make you never be able to achieve. Or in terms of pregnancy rates, you are a new clinic, you just started functioning, you have an external benchmark of an implantation rate of 50%. You are new, you are maybe at 30%. You cannot set a benchmark for 50% for you. You need to take baby steps, otherwise everyone will be depressed in your clinic. So look at your internal data, internal performance, and then aim to reach what is an external benchmark. And there are many, many associations which have come out with such benchmarks. So this is the ACE guideline, you have the ESHRE guidelines, you have the Vienna consensus, so on and so forth. But the one which is relevant for what I'm speaking about today is the Maribor consensus, which is the report of an expert meeting, which is looking at performance indicators for clinical practices. So this is looking at setting up specific performance indices for clinical work in the clinic with specific definitions. It has got two criteria. One is called a competence level, which is the bare minimum that is expected. And second is the benchmark, which is the ideal or the aspirational value. And this looks at cycle cancellation rates before OPU, and it also looks at cancellation rates after OPU. Now, the frequency at which you measure and analyze is also very vital, because let's say if you're doing 5 cycles a month and you look at weekly reports, you will have 1 cycle data in it. But if you are doing 1,000 cycles a month, maybe even your weekly data would be sufficient. So you decide the frequency of analyzing and reporting based on your volumes. It could be as low as once a month, or it could also as low as once every 6 months, or ideally it should be once every month. But typically 100 cycle is the denominator which you should be looking at before you analyze the data. Otherwise, you will not have meaningful conclusions. So this cycle cancellation rate is defined as number of cycles cancelled before OPU divided by number of started cycles. And if it is cancellation after, and if it is complication rate, then you look at the complications. So what the Maribor consensus tells is that the competence level, see here it comes, depends on your reference population. So poor responders, it could be 40% as the bare minimum. The aspirational figure is 20%. If it is a normo responders, it could be 20%, but the ideal is 7%. If it is a high responder, it should not be more than 3%, ideally at 1.5%. So depending on what category of patients you are taking, this is what you should be looking at. This will tell you should be my ideal cycle cancellation rate. Now with this, let me take you through and you then also know that the cycle cancellation could be related to biological factors, or it could be because of the clinic's various strategies. So let me now take you through what do we monitor and how do we go about this. So this is a report of our clinic. The first indicator which is being looked at is the total number of stimulation days for every patient. So for the clinic, for self oocytes, it was 9.16. For donors, it is 8.8. The figures in black are the reference or the benchmarks values that we are looking at. So in both, we are doing half a day less stimulation. Similarly, we could have all the other parameters which should be monitored. You could have your competency levels, your benchmarks. You will have international competency levels and international benchmarks. The second is the days. So this days of stimulation, and you can see month on month how the days of stimulation are varying. And you then also compare it with other clinics within your group and see whether you are performing better or below average. Second is then the average gonadotrophins that you are giving per stimulation. Because if your average gonadotrophin is very low, maybe your cancellation dates are going to be higher. So this is the average gonadotrophin consumption across the group. This graph below is segregating self versus donors. And this is then looking at the cancellation rate based from the stimulation, which is the light blue line. The dark blue is from the pickup, and third is from the embryology, that is post pickup. So you're looking at cancellation rates from all the parameters from stimulation till pickup, after pickup because of no oocytes, and after pickup because of no embryo. So at all three levels, you look at the various cancellation rates and you plot them on a graph, and this will tell you where you land. You then do a subgroup analysis and see whether the cancellation rates can be linked to AMH, because if the ovarian reserve of your patients is low, the cancellation rate is going to be higher. And this is exactly what is seen, that in the first group, where the AMH is below 0.49, the cancellation rate is somewhere around 24%. But the moment the AMH goes above 3, the cancellation rate's near 0. So very obvious, based on your patient profile, the cancellation rates will change. So a more detailed breakup based on the AMH values of the patients as to how many patients are in which AMH group, what are the cancellation rates in each category, and then you can compare clinics, because if one clinic is treating higher number of poor responders, obviously the overall cancellation rate of the clinic is going to be high. And you can then look at the various causes. Are these patients adequately stimulated based on the gonadotrophins and the days of stimulation? Once you have done this and you find a problem, you should then look at the various stimulation or the drugs that have been given. And because drugs is not only an issue related to consistency and success, but in large groups, it is also an issue of inventory management. If you have 50 clinics with 100 clinicians and each of the 100 clinicians wants to use a different brand, you will never be able to arrive at any meaningful conclusions. If you are able to optimize your inventory, you will be able to get the drugs at a cheaper rate. You might be able to offer treatment at a more competitive rate, and you will also be able to improve your profit margins. So this is a chart looking at how various protocols or drugs have been used, and you can so see that this is here, there, and everywhere. Combinations, HMG alone, HMG FSH, FSH alone, REC FSH alone, REC FSH HMG, REC FSH LH. There are so many variations, and you can see the effect of this variation. If only urinary HMG is used versus the other drugs that are used, the pregnancy rates and the percentage of cycles that have surplus embryos for freezing is different compared to what one would expect with the other drugs. So if you're using REC FSH A or B, you would not only have a higher pregnancy rate, but you would also have a higher percentage of embryos with more surplus freezable embryos. So the first thing that you need to do is standardize your drug formularies. You then need to stratify your patients based on your ovarian reserve, and then you need to ensure whether these patients are being adequately stimulated so that you are able to reduce the overall cancellation rates. And based on this, what you then prepare is what is called a balanced scorecard. So what was the organization wanting to achieve? You wanted to reduce your cancellation rate. For this, you define a strategy, and you then see whether your strategy of what 3 points which I had mentioned earlier, you assess ovarian reserve, you give optimal stimulation, and you do optimal monitoring. Has this strategy materialized, and has it got translated into goals of each and every department of the company? And did your KPIs satisfy this? Because if you have done this, then you will have developed competence. Once this competence has been developed, it will increase your clinical results. It will lead to better quality. It will lead to developing a better product, meaning an IVF service. This will eventually lead to increase in patient satisfaction. And if there is increase in patient satisfaction, it will increase your income, it will increase your value of the company. And you can use this additional income back to improve the performance. So one example on ICSI, if you want to improve the ICSI competence, let us you give them more training. If you give them more training and let's say end of the day, your pregnancy rate goes up by 2%, this 2% extra patients will refer your clinic to 5% more referrals, will lead to an increase in referrals. Your overall income will go up, and you can use part of this income again to fund this development, because for training also you need money. So this not only helps in improving one particular parameter, but this will help you in improving patient outcomes and your company's outcomes and your company's reputation. So once again, thank you very much for calling me, inviting me to speak at this webinar. It is always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That's a very interesting concept you shared. I remember 2008 and 7 when the NARI registry started, and that time onwards, the KPI and the importance of KPI you have been, introduced first time to India, and this just continue. Happy to see that. Sir, one doubt is that see when we are practicing, if not a chain, suppose a standalone center, something like that. How easily can do monitoring? It's a simple an Excel sheet will do the work, or nowadays we have a lot of workstations and other fascinating softwares and tools are available. So simply, how easily we can do this in a baseline setup?
I think any way where you can do real-time recording of data is fine, because softwares make the data extraction easier. But even if you're doing Excel sheets, it is fine. I think whatever works, because for single clinics, I can understand softwares may be expensive, you need training. But even in a software, data is eventually stored as an Excel sheet. So either you download separately, but the only challenge with maintaining Excel sheets is every department will be maintaining a different Excel sheet. So as a clinician, you will have an Excel sheet on stimulation. The lab will have another Excel sheet which will be on embryology. And then to merge all the Excels and analyze is a challenge. So having a software always helps, because then all data is recorded at one place. And as I said, the second most important thing is this has to be real time. Because if you don't enter, let's say, if you don't enter the number of oocytes retrieved on the day of the pickup and you allow it to be entered on the next day, there is a possibility that there is a human tendency to look good, and you may not get the accurate data. So it has to be real time.
Now with the advent of AI, can you suggest any of tools which can be easily incorporated? Because last year when the IFS started, a lot of automation in our health or IVF industry has come up. So can you suggest any easy tools like ChatGPT or something like that we can use this for a day-to-day practice? In your opinion?
AI tools are not yet standardized, because there are a lot of AI-based algorithms which will tell you that if you feed the patient characteristics, it will give you a protocol that you should use. You enter the age, BMI, AFC, AMH, and it will tell you what protocol to give. I would rather develop my own protocol for my clinic based on my experience, go back to the last 6 months data and see what works in your scenario, and then you prepare an algorithm which is based on your own experience. Because most of the AI tools are from Western countries. They do not understand Indian demography. They do not understand the ovarian responsiveness of our own patients. So AI tools, I would not rely on an international AI tool. I would rather rely on something which has been working in my clinic under my setting.
Yes, sir. I think we haven't seen any questions in the chat box. Thank you for
one simple question, Manish. You showed variations in the clinical data. Say, for example, variation in AMH and then variation in the age across different clinics when you see. Do you change your benchmarks also accordingly at various levels, or you fix one benchmark and work on it?
So the overall benchmarks for the clinics remain the same. So you cannot have different benchmarks for pregnancy rates. But when you are assessing whether the clinic is performing to that benchmark or not, looking at these variations will give us an idea as to whether the non-performance or underperformance of the clinic is because of a problem, or is it simply because of patient profile. And if it is only because of patient profile, then it is not a cause for concern.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, thank you, sir. Sir, Gopinath sir, would you like to say a few comments on the topic, or?
See, the topic as such is very, very important. Clinically, we should be able to understand the basic of your thing. It is not a research. as Manish has pointed out, the need and purpose of the audit has to be understood. And how do we stage the audit? What are all the tools we use it are very, very vital. As there are some lot of clinical variations among that, we cannot take that as an excuse for a different performances. So we have to categorize and then place accordingly. And you should have, it is something like, it's a continuous cycle, not yearly one auditing is enough to say that what is being. There has to be a continuous performance for your continuous improvement, which is there. He has highlighted the very simple basic KPIs and how you can interact with the KPIs to see and understand the different performance level of different clinics or the same clinic in different way. I think it was a wonderful talk and a very simple talk, and all of us could understand it, Manish. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that wonderful talk. And I thank the chairpersons for the same. Over to you, Dr. Ashwin, for the next talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I thank the chairpersons for being part of this session. And I thank Manish Bankar, sir, for the wonderful talk that he'd given. Moving on to session 2, we have a new set of chairpersons, Dr. Bindu Chimote and Dr. Mangla Devi. And the session 2 is going to be all about pregnancy rate, meaningful KPIs for IVF laboratories. If you look at it, success in IVF is far more about just a single pregnancy rate. It lies in measuring the right indicators at every step of the laboratory journey. This session should actually delve into the key performance indicators that truly reflect laboratory excellence and drive continuous improvements in reproductive outcomes. I would like to introduce our chairpersons for the next session. I hope people can see my screen. And for the next session, we have Dr. Bindu Chimote. She is a senior consultant clinical embryologist, a PhD reproductive biology IVF, MSc clinical embryology Leeds, UK. She is secretary of IFS Vidharbha chapter from 2024-26 and 26-28. She has presented several original article research papers at ESHRE ASRM IFS World Congress, and she's won the Best Paper Award at ASRM in 2023 and the Best Poster Video Award at ASRM 2019. She's published 10 original research papers in international peer-reviewed journals, co-editor of the book A Comprehensive Handbook of IVF. She has contributed several chapters to national and international books on infertility and reviewer for international journals JARG and RBE. Our next chairperson is Dr. Mangla Devi. I'm sorry, I couldn't reach out to you for your CV, so I just picked it up from the Manipal website. She's a senior consultant obstetric gynecologist, qualification MBBS MSOG, diploma in reproductive medicine, and she's certified IVF specialist and MBA. She is a highly accomplished gynecologist and trusted gynecologist in Old Airport Road, Manipal, with advanced expertise in reproductive medicine, high-risk pregnancy care. She's a consultant at Manipal Hospital, Old Airport Road, and she brings 20 years of extensive clinical experience with her. And she's also well-rounded and deeply informed gynecologist with good approach to patient care. Thank you, ma'am, for being part of our session. I would like to request Dr. Bindu Chimote to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Sujata Ramakrishnan.
Well, good evening, everyone. And what a wonderful webinar this is. Experience speaks for itself. And we had an excellent talk delivered by Dr. Manish Bankar, a very comprehensive overview of the KPIs and the need for clinical audits in reducing cycle cancellations. And I must say, he beautifully highlighted the point that unless we measure, we cannot manage and we cannot improve. And now we have another experienced person coming up to speak about the laboratory aspects and all this discussion. Wait, let me introduce Dr. Sujata Ramakrishnan, another experienced embryologist, a veteran in the field, I must say, the president of Academy of Clinical Embryologists and American Board of Bioanalysts Certified Embryology Lab Director. He has held in Nova IVF Fertility, Lab Director in the British Hospital, Abu Dhabi, Kraft Hospital and Research Center, and Cloud9 Fertility as well. She has more than 25 years of hands-on experience in clinical embryology. And as I said, she is the president, a dynamic president, who has brought about a lot of changes in the field of embryology as being the president of Academy of Clinical Embryologists. So we would really love to hear from Dr. Sujata about the latest in the field. I must say, because in the current scenario where things are rapidly changing with the introduction of AI and other autonomous technologies, the goalposts are rapidly changing. They keep on changing, and it is interesting to know how do we really keep a track of the lab KPIs so that we increase pregnancy rates. So over to you, Dr. Sujata. Welcome.
Share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Bindu, for that kind introduction. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Priya Kannan and the entire SIG of IFS for inviting me to this session to talk about a very important topic of the relevance of IVF lab KPIs to pregnancy rate. Now, when the first IVF baby was born, IVF as a process was very simple and much primitive compared to the standards of today.
Dr. Sujata, we cannot see your screen.
I mean, we are able to see something called Zoom, but we are not able to see the presentation.
Is it?
Yeah. It shows Zoom Workplace.
Okay, no. Still no?
No.
Okay.
You need to open your PPT and then start sharing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. I have opened it. I can see it here.
Can you close it and then start again? Close the presentation and start sharing again.
That's why I called, because I was so tired today. I thought, let me call him and finish.
can we just mute everyone else?
Yes, please. Sujata, do you want to share it with one of us so we can at least... No.
Now, can you see it now?
No, we're not able to see your presentation. It's not started sharing.
Okay, so 1 second. I will just share it with you, Priya.
Yes, please. You're sending me a mail or WhatsApp?
I'll send it by WhatsApp. Have shared it.
Yes, I have received it.
This is the gap we need to bridge in terms of technology and our own understanding, the factors.
Yeah, true. Technology is there, but
Yes. Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see that. See it.
oh, okay.
1 second. I've just
Yes.
made. Oh gosh, 1 second. Are you seeing it now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So,
You
okay.
just go to the slideshow and then start.
Yeah, it's in slideshow mode only in me. Here.
Here, you might have to go to the bottom and make it slide. We are
It
able to
is.
see your click on notes. It's not on SlideShare.
Is it? Now?
No, the PPT is not seen.
I'm sorry about this.
No problem. Should I start sharing?
Yeah, maybe you can then. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to start?
Yes.
Is everybody able to see the PPT?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, lovely. You can start.
So, Priya, I think you might have to operate it for me,
Yeah,
right?
I will. Of course,
Yeah.
I will.
So, the next slide. Okay. So, what I was talking was IVF 40 years ago was a very simple process, much primitive compared to what we are having now today. Today, it has become one of the sophisticated biological process in the field of medicine. From the time egg pickup is done and until the time of embryo transfer, there are more than 200 variables which have been identified, which can have an impact on the quality of gametes and the embryo development potential. Some of them act directly, some of them act indirectly, some of them kind of cascade into downstream events. Now we need a set of parameters which will help us to monitor these variables, and they are the key performance indicators. So key performance indicators actually would help us in assessing the safety and efficiency of the IVF process. Now, the Vienna Consensus has proposed 19 ART laboratory indicators, out of which 12 are key performance indicators, which directly have an impact on the outcome. 5 are performance indicators. This actually tells us about certain process in the IVF laboratory. And 2 are reference indicators, which actually tells us the quality of material which we are working with. Now, the Vienna Consensus also suggests that a laboratory should have its own set of KPIs based on the number of cycles they're performing and the way in which the cycles are done, like whether it is a batch or you do cycles every day. Based on that, we have to choose our own KPI. Can I have the next slide? So to define the scope of this presentation, we will have a very quick look at the characteristics and categories of KPI. Dr. Banker had already explained some of these, but I would be just reiterating them again. And we would also see what are the KPIs under these headings like embryology, system, manpower, and safety, which are non-negotiable for the lab. And I have also included a couple of slides on how do we combine both the clinical as well as the laboratory KPIs so that we get a better prediction of pregnancy rates. And finally, a summary. Next slide, please, Priya. So there has to be 7 basic characteristics for KPI. 1, measurable. We know that fertilization rate is number of 2PNs divided by the number of M2s. We cannot have laboratory cleanliness or experience of embryologists as a KPI because they cannot be objectively measured. Now, they also have to be reproducible, clinically relevant, and actionable. See, when we are having clinical pregnancy as the KPI. Of course, we all have that, but if that is going to be a primary KPI, if there is a change in the clinical pregnancy, we cannot do any modification in the lab immediately. The reason being, we get to know about this 3 weeks later. By then the media would have changed, lot number of medias would have changed, the air quality would have changed. So we cannot take any action immediately. Instead, if you are having a day 5 blastocyst rate as our primary KPI, then we will get to know immediately and then things can be changed. So this is an important characteristic. And then a KPI also has to be sensitive to laboratory changes. It's like a smoke detector. So when there is a problem, immediately it should send us a signal. So we will be able to take action on that. And they also have to be standardized, benchmarkable, and simple to monitor. See, as such, a laboratory has a lot of work. And, like we do a lot of documentation also. On top of it, if we have to monitor a KPI, it has to be simple and it should kind of flow within our laboratory workflow. Next slide, please, Priya. So as per the Vienna consensus, we have 3 categories of KPI. Structural KPI, which actually tells us about the infrastructure, the laboratory, manpower, and other factors. And procedural KPIs, this actually tells us about the compliance with certain laboratory processes. For example, when do we do our egg pickup? When do we do our denudation? How long do we wait after warming before we transfer the embryos? And all these biological processes are included here. And outcome KPI, it actually tells us about the effectiveness of laboratory performance, like all our fertilization rate, blastulation rate, usable blast rate, all these things actually come under the outcome KPIs. Next slide, please, Priya. So when we are if we are choosing KPIs for our laboratory, it should give us an overview of all these 4 parameters. It has to tell us about the gamete and embryo development. It also has to tell us about the equipment and the culture media, the major components of culture system used. And the competency of embryologists also should be included, and safety in the IVF laboratory is also a part. So we have to choose KPI which will give information about all these 4 parameters. Let us start looking at these one by one. Priya, next slide. So embryology KPI, we have fertilization rate, ICSI degeneration rate, day 5 blastocyst formation rate. I have specified day 5 here because many of us, we actually look at the total blastocyst formation rate. But we get a lot of blastocysts on day 5, and in some we get on day 6. There are labs which even culture up to day 7. Now, what is the proportion of these blastocysts? So, for example, an ideal lab should have 80% of its blastocysts forming on day 5. If there is a change in that, then definitely it is worth looking at the culture conditions. So specifically, we have to see what is the blastocyst formation rate on day 5. Then usable blast rate. Instead of having total blastocyst rate as the KPI, we should look at the blastocysts which can be frozen or can be transferred. The picture you are seeing on the left, it is actually considered as a blastocyst. However, it is of no use because you don't see an ICM there. You see degenerated trophectoderm, and this blastocyst, anyway, it will be discarded. So there is no point in knowing like how many blastocysts have we created like that. So the right metrics would be to look at the usable blastocyst rate. Then also the cryosurvival rate. Now let us just see what evidence do we have in the literature to support that these KPIs, they actually help us in predicting pregnancy rate. Priya, next slide. So fertilization rate as KPI, there are a lot of publications, but I wanted to highlight this particular one, which was published in Fertility Sterility in 2021. Here, they actually analyzed some 9,000 cycles, which is a very huge number. So what they have done is, fertilization rate is classified into 3 groups. Patients with less than 65% of fertilization rate, they come in group 1. and 65 to 80 would come in group 2 and above 80 would come in group 3. Now, they looked at the live birth rate in these categories. And this is the overall live birth rate, the graph which you are seeing at the extreme right. As you can see, when the birth rate is less than 65%, the live birth rate is only 20%. And when it is above 80%, the live birth rate significantly increased up to 41%. Now, they again segregated the patients into different age groups. And you can see the first 3 bar graphs here, less than 34, 35 to 38, and 39 to 42. They saw the same pattern in all these groups. So the message from this particular study is fertilization rate is a novel indicator for predicting cumulative live birth rate. Now, the key factor which we have to keep in mind is you have to normalize for maternal age, stimulation protocol, sperm motility after preparation, and the maturity rates of embryos to actually get the benefit of this as the KPI. If you are just, taking an average of everybody's fertilization rate in the lab, that may not have that much of an impact on the outcome. Now, moving on to the next one, which is the next slide, please. The day 5 usable blast rate. It's a very interesting study published in Human Reproduction in 2019, Dean Morbeck's paper. Here, say they analyzed retrospectively their clinical pregnancy rate for a period of 15 months. Now, this 15 months was divided into 3 5-month groups, P1, P2, P3. And when they looked, you can see the graph on the left. The P1 pregnancy rate was okay, it was above average, but P2, the pregnancy rate actually had fallen down. And they kind of correlated with a change in the culture media in the lab. And when they realized it and they changed it, the pregnancy rate again started to go up in the third 5-month period, that is the P3 period. Now, what they did, they tried to look at the laboratory KPIs during that time to check, had they followed up with any of the lab KPIs, would they have given this alarm much earlier? And interestingly, they found that the total blastocyst formation rate was same throughout. They didn't find any change. However, when they looked at the day 5 usable blast rate, you can see the graph which is on the right. In the second period, that is P2, there is a significant drop, almost 7% drop in the day 5 usable blastocyst formation rate. And then once things changed, it kind of picked up. So again, the message from this particular study is day 5 blastocyst formation rate, it actually identifies the shift in the laboratory performance months before the change in pregnancy rate was observed. So, compared to total blastocyst formation rate, this is a better KPI to correlate with pregnancy outcome. Priya, next slide, please. Now, most of our cycles are frozen embryo transfer cycles. Hence, it's also important to have a KPI which will look at the efficiency of this program. Now, as per the Vienna consensus, cryosurvival is a metric where they have defined the competency as more than 90% and the benchmark as more than 99%. However, once a lab achieves this 99%, now this particular KPI is of less clinical significance. It's not going to tell us anything more. If it is a new lab, if it's a new embryologist, it's okay. But then once that is established, then the more accurate metrics to look for would be the blastocyst expansion post-warming, and that is a better predictor of live birth. There was a publication a study by Alstrom, and which was published in Human Reproduction. This is even mentioned in the Vienna consensus, that where they reported with every 10% increase in the post-warming blastocyst re-expansion, the odds of live birth increased by 39%. So instead of just looking at cryosurvival post-warming, it is better to look at embryo re-expansion post-warming. Priya, next slide. Now, the next question would be, so if you're looking at re-expansion, what should be the timing? Because if the literature has plenty of references where, like people have seen, checked for re-expansion at half an hour, 1 hour, and until 4-5 hours. So what is the right timing we can actually implement in our laboratory? The general consensus is to look for re-expansion 2 hours after warming. And reason being, 2 hours is a good enough time. Suppose if you don't see the embryo re-expanding, it gives you enough time to thaw more embryos if you have, and it will also kind of fit in with our FET workflows. So we can check for re-expansion after 2 hours post warming. This can be a very sensitive KPI for our cryopreservation program. Priya, next slide, please.
Just a second, something happened and I am out of my slideshow something.
Maximize and then on slide.
Yeah, it just slipped out.
Okay, next one,
Yes.
please. Okay, so next, I think this is the one, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so laboratory system. See, we were just looking at the embryology things, and then we also have to, yeah, next one, please.
Okay.
Okay. See, anyway, we are checking day 5 usable blast rate. It is a good idea to look at the lot number of culture media, and this will also help us to, this will be a KPI for checking the quality of culture media and also the performance of the incubators. Like if you have multiple incubators, you can check for day 5 usable blast rate in different incubators. Or if you're using one big incubator with multiple shelves, then you can actually check for this day 5 usable blast rate in all those places, because we know that when you do a temperature mapping in incubator between chambers, there is a lot of difference. So this actually will help us to identify the performance of the incubator. Now, if you ask me if there is any evidence in the literature regarding this, no. I have not seen any paper where they have compared the different lot numbers of media. The reason being, manufacturers, when they release media, they already do a checking. So it is assumed that all lot numbers perform equally well. So what are we trying to see is, like from the time it is shipped and until the time it reaches our lab, anything could have happened. There could be temperature variation, so we are only checking that, and hence this KPI has to be standardized in our own laboratory. We do not have any external value to depend on. The next one, please, Priya. So we also have to assess the competency of embryologist. It's important, and the only KPI for that would be the ICSI degeneration rate. Though ICSI degeneration rate, along with the operator skill, it will also be influenced by oocyte quality, laboratory conditions, and so many other things. So it cannot be a direct marker. It can only be a surrogate competency marker. And the competency level suggested by Vienna consensus is less than 10%, and benchmarking is less than 5%. Now, when it is not a direct marker, the question would be, do we still have to look for or monitor the embryologist competency? The answer is yes. Priya, next slide. This is a very interesting study which was published in 2020, where they analyzed close to 14,000 ICSI cycles. Now here, what they have done is the patients' oocytes were divided between 2 embryologists, and the fertilization rates were assessed. The ICSI was done by 2 embryologists. Now, less experienced ICSI operators, they were found to have less fertilization rate. The odds of failed fertilization was higher, and no usable blastocyst formation was much higher when the embryologist experience is less. And then they also had a very low implantation rate. And so definitely the competency of embryologists matter. From their experience, what they have suggested is, if an embryologist actually does more than 1,000 ICSIs, then this problem it does not arise. But until then, the competency of embryologist has to be monitored. So degeneration rate is an important KPI. Next slide, please. So, but when we are monitoring all these KPIs, it's very important to stick to timings, because if blastocyst formation rate has to be checked at a particular timing, fertilization rate has to be checked at a particular timing. If we are doing that erratically and very randomly, then these KPIs will not have any meaning at all, neither will have it any relevance to the outcome. And then Dr. Banker had already explained this, like we also need to stratify the patient. We cannot just take a simple average and then compare, saying that last month my day 5 blastocyst formation rate was this much, this month it is like this much, and we do not infer anything from this exercise. The patients, they definitely have to be stratified based on their age, whether it is donor eggs or self eggs, whether it's frozen, fresh, PGT, non-PGT, and this is something which has to be done in the lab itself. And the most important thing which I feel, which is kind of overlooked in many labs, is the denominator. People have different denominators for different KPIs. Recently, I saw a presentation in ESHRE where live birth was calculated based on the clinical pregnancy. So, they were presenting a live birth rate of 95%. So, denominators are very important. And can I have the next slide? I think I have explained it there. See, this is a study which is, I think, yet to be published. I only got the preprint of it. Here, they looked at the blastocyst formation rate using two denominators. One, M2. The second one is the 2PN. See, the difference is, during ICSI, there are few oocytes which will get degenerated. And normally what we do is, we do not consider that when we calculate our blastocyst formation rate. So when you do that, actually you get a better picture of blastocyst formation. If you are just checking it on the number of normally formed 2PNs, then your blastocyst formation rate would definitely look better. But if you take the number of M2s which are injected, then that will take into account the abnormal fertilizations and degeneration and failed fertilization, all that into account, and that would give you a true picture of what is happening in the lab. Now, what is the significance of this? And it's very interesting to note that when blastocyst formation was checked conventionally, that's on the 2PN, 38 operators, out of 38 operators, 24 were cleared because they were doing well. But the true blastocyst formation rate, when it was checked, only 7 operators cleared the benchmark. So that means if you are looking at the competency of embryologists in the lab, then definitely I think you have to define the denominator. And in blastocyst formation rate, it would definitely help to look at the number of M2s injected and the numbers which converted to blastocysts. Next slide, please. So a laboratory can have beautiful KPIs like 90% fertilization rate, 60-70% blastocyst formation rate. But if every other day there is a mix-up of gamete, or somebody dropping the dish, or embryos getting lost, then the laboratory is not a good one, because safety and efficiency actually make a lab excellent. So we need to have a KPI for looking at the safety. And here, the one which we can check is the number of incidents which has happened, or the near miss reporting. Because generally, the major incidents do not happen very frequently, but there can be a lot of near miss incidents, and we have to define the time period and the number of incidents, and this has to be tracked to make the because eventually that will have an impact on the pregnancy rate. So this definitely has to be tracked. Next slide, please. So before we finish, I just want to kind of highlight this particular study, which was published in 2017, where they combined both the clinical and the laboratory KPIs, and then they created a KPI score. Priya, next slide, please. I think that will have. So here, from the lab, they have taken fertilization rate and the embryo morphology quality as the KPI. And from the clinical side, they have taken age, AMH, and the number of oocytes. Now, the best, they divided it into 3 categories. The best category will get 5 points. The next best would get 3 points, and the last one would get 1 point. So just example, age, if it is less than 36, you can give 5 points. If it is between 37 and 39, you get 3 points. And if it is above 40, then you get 1 point. Similarly, say for example, for fertilization, if you get more than 65%, then they get 5 points. And 50 to 65, you give 3. And then less than 50, it is 1. So with this, you can calculate and get a numerical value. Now, if this numerical value, say we have 5 parameters, right? And 5 being the highest, if you get a score of 25, you can actually, the probability of getting a clinical pregnancy is 70%. And as this score goes down, the probability of clinical pregnancy actually goes down. They have also given, the way to interpret this scores. Priya, can I have the next slide, please? So when you have both the clinical and the laboratory KPIs in, good, but still you're not getting pregnancies, then you have to look beyond that. Like say, for example, the endometrial preparation or the embryo transfer procedure and things which are not included here. And if the clinical KPI is good, but the lab KPI is not good, the lab score is not going up, then you have to immediately look at the lab, the culture conditions and other factors. And if continuously, if the lab parameters are poor, then you also have to look at the embryologist performance. But the only problem with this kind of scoring is each lab has to kind of devise their own way of, what are the parameters they have to look, and then they have to kind of create a scoring system, and which will definitely help them in identifying or at least predicting the probability of clinical pregnancy. Next slide, please. And see, when you are measuring KPI, one thing is important. You have to look for a trend. See, today there is a patient with a poor blastocyst formation. Immediately, there should not be a knee-jerk reaction to change things. Always look for changes in the trend, follow it up. It is a good idea to have such Levy-Jennings plot where you have a mean. You have defined an upper control limit. You also have defined a lower control limit. And then you keep watching. The moment the trend is going down, you have to be alert and try to make changes in the lab. Next slide, please. So what is the future of KPIs? I think, now what we are doing is we are measuring performance. But I think sooner or later, we are moving to predicting performance. See, the major problem with all of us is like we enter a lot of data, but we don't have time to sit and analyze the data. But I think we will have, automatic data capture. It could be from our electronic witnessing systems. It could be from our EMR. And, instead of generating monthly reports, we are going to have these colorful dashboards, which you see on the extreme right. And now, because of time constraint, and it is, humanly not possible to look at all the KPIs, we are selecting few KPIs and then we are measuring them. But when things are automated, I think we'll have integrated quality metrics, which actually will give us an idea about the procedure, like a 360-degree view of the IVF procedure. So now we are detecting problems, but we will soon predict problems. And I think many labs, say for example, the Care Fertility in UK, they use Power BI for all their analysis. Data is fed through an Excel sheet, which is analyzed by Power BI. I think we will move ahead from there. And then, this is what the KPI is going to be in the next few years. Next slide, please. to sum it up, the major KPIs which do have an impact on pregnancy rate are the 2PN rate, the ICSI degeneration, day 5 blastocyst formation rate, usable blast formation rate, the blastocyst expansion rate, and for safety, the near miss or the incident reporting. Now, we also have to remember that QC parameters such as temperature, pH, osmolality, air quality, and incubator recovery, they have a major role on this KPI. So this has to be controlled. So we all know that we cannot improve the quality of embryos in the lab. All we can do is to protect them from stress. So quality control parameters, they protect the environment, and the KPIs actually tell us if the protection is working. So I would want to say that any lab which is not monitoring the KPIs or analyzing the KPIs, it is like a flight which is flying without a cockpit, just the engine and fuel. We will not know whether we are ascending, whether we are descending, or we are, like heading towards any trouble. So we have to have focused KPIs which will serve as warning signals and which will also help us in achieving optimal outcomes in the lab. Thank you very much. And I apologize for the technical issues.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sujata. It was really a wonderful lecture, and you took into consideration the most relevant and meaningful lab KPIs, be it the fertilization rate, day 5 blastocyst formation, usable blastocyst, blastocyst utilization rate, cryo survival, and of course the embryologist skill. And what you mentioned really at the end is also the most important point, that the laboratory quality control, it's like a air traffic controller where every aspect needs to be taken, otherwise everything will just fall apart. So your quality control is of utmost importance too. And so what you have highlighted also is that the lab KPIs are mostly dependent on the clinical KPIs also. And before we define KPIs, we need to stratify the patients to be able to really define the KPIs in a proper manner. And I really appreciate that you laid emphasis on the fact that the denominator is most important when we calculate the KPIs. So that struck me, because if we look at that, the denominator should remain constant. If it is changing, that means either it should be constant or there should be a minimal change. If it is changing, for example, the number of eggs retrieved and the number of M2s, so if there is a disparity, that reflects on the clinical aspect as well. The clinical KPI has gone wrong. And then out of that, out of the M2, if you see a lot of degeneration rate, then that is again embryologist skill that is being reflected. Though we may not take into consideration while calculating, we will take into consideration just the 2 PNs observed. But that degeneration rate is also a reflection of the embryologist skill and the laboratory factors as well. So how the denominator, change in the denominator is actually reflecting the other performance indicators as well. So that is very interesting, and we should focus on minimizing this shift in the denominator. That would be an ideal situation, I must say. So yes, an excellent lecture, and a lot of take-home messages there for all those who are watching. And if there are any questions, can we take, Dr. Priya?
Yes, of course.
Chat. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Sujata, a very simple basic question. Should the base KPIs be different for a new lab and for an already a newly set up lab and one that has been working for a few years? Do you think that there should be any difference?
See, certain KPIs are, like universal. Say, for example, fertilization rate, like that can be universal. But for us, for a new lab, maybe, instead of looking at a blastocyst expansion rate, initially they have to look at the cryosurvival rate, So you can tailor your KPIs based on that. Then slowly move to the expansion rate. Similarly, if it's a new lab and if they are not going to do a lot of blastocyst culture, then, like the day 5 blastocyst, or that becomes meaningless. Because I've seen, what happens is people would freeze some embryos on day 3, and then they would subtract that from the denominator. Now they'll say 3 embryos I cultured, and then all 3 became blastocysts. Now these 3 which you have cultured, maybe they are the good ones. Like that gives us a wrong this thing. So actually that becomes meaningless. So there maybe you can just have your day 3 embryo formation, good embryos, as your KPI.
Yes. So quality of embryos formed, whether day 3 or day 5.
Yes.
Any other question?
Is there a question? No.
No. I think Dr. Mangala also was a co-chairperson, if she wishes to say something.
I don't find her here. So probably if there is none, then we can conclude the session and hand it over to Dr. Ashwin, and so we can conclude the session.
I must add, thank you so much, Dr. Priya, for involving us in this webinar. It's much needed, and I'm really happy that Dr. Manish Bankar was there to speak on this topic, and he spoke very, truthfully, that clinicians are very skeptic. They do not readily accept if there is any fault, but then for them also to come up with KPIs is really appreciated. So clinical KPIs also need to be defined and worked on a lot. We as
Sure,
we
absolutely.
are looking at more on the lab KPIs, but then yes, the clinical KPIs.
Because we are more measurable. That's
Yes,
the easy way. We are more measurable. If there are no more questions, then over to you, Dr. Ashwin.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, do we have Dr. Sankalp Singh today?
Dr. Sankalp Singh, he was here. Let me check if
So that
we
we can
know
have the
he's
vote of
not
thanks
here.
from sir. Okay.
Dr. Rahul Sen is here. Dr. Rahul, are you here? Dr. Sankalp, are you here? Oh, yes, he's there. Yes, he's there.
So in that case, so I request Sankalp sir to give us the vote of thanks for today.
Hi, it is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks today for the IFS SIG on KPI and audit. On behalf of the SIG committee, I express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Professor Neena Malhotra, the President of IFS, and Dr. Shweta Gupta, Secretary General. And we are deeply grateful to Dr. Rajpi Ayyappan, who's the South Zone Coordinator. Dr. P.M. Gopinathan for being the mentor and expert for today's program, Dr. Manish Bankar and my very good friend, Dr. Sujata, for sharing their expertise and practical insights on reducing the cycle cancellation through audit and understanding the meaningful KPIs for the lab. And I also sincerely thank Dr. Ajanta, Dr. Raju, Dr. Bindu, Dr. Mangla, the secretaries of the respective chapters of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Vidharbha, and Karnataka for their valuable contribution to the meet. And sincere appreciations to Dr. Priya and Dr. Rahul for their teamwork and dedication in organizing this event. And thank you all the participants and delegates for your enthusiastic participation. And with this, we would like to conclude today's session. Thank you once again for your presence and contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being part of this webinar, and